So, good afternoon everyone. Welcome today to this webinar about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. My name is Carlijn de Vries and I'm a finance and sustainability consultant at McCoy & Partners. And I'm looking forward to tell you more today about the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. As you see in the screen, I will not do this alone. Today my BI colleague, Yuri Lagarde, will help me out to tell some topics today. But I will start and I will tell you more about the theory of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. I think it's a mouthful. This acronym really tells a lot about the definition of this concept. So corporate tells you something about the scope. We are talking to corporates today. Hopefully many of you are working at corporates and interested to learn more what this means for your company. Sustainability is the focus word of today. It's a buzzword in today's society, so very nice that you're joining on this topic. And the reporting directive means that we're talking about a regulation, something with an obligation, and it's all about the reporting of sustainability. So, my name is Carlijn de Vries, and thank you for joining. Let's go. What is sustainability? I think if you walk around, you walk out of your office right now, you see a lot of marketing with sustainability. You read newspapers about sustainability. And since I started working on this topic, everyone keeps sending me all of these notifications about how people do well or do not do well on sustainability. I think CSRD is here today with us to help us form a definition that we can all agree on. So what does it really mean? The first definition that pops up when you Google sustainability is meeting the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations. I think we can all agree that this is a good definition for sustainability. However, you can also look at it from another perspective, more an environmental perspective. I think that's more of a little bit of the ancient definition of sustainability. So that would be regulating forest resources to meet the needs of society and industry while preserving the forest health. So really thinking about the trees that we want to maintain, of course, for a very long period of time still. However, you can also think of sustainability as the quality of being able to continue over a period. So I think this one sounds a bit further off. However, if you think about the words sustain and ability, it's the ability to sustain something, so to do it for a longer period. And finally, more process and industry-based, you can say it's the ability to maintain or support a process continuously over time, which may help in your industry. So, what will I cover today? At McCoy & Partners, we developed this roadmap. And this roadmap is going to help us to take apart the entire concept of CSRD and look at what this means for your company. So whether you're here and you hear of this term for the first time, I will help you understand the term, or whether you're here to look for a plan on how to tackle this problem, then I will also help you today. So the first step on CSRD roadmap for us is understanding the timeline of compliance. So I will tell you more about that, but it's very important to understand about which period we're now talking. Next, it's important to divide the responsibilities. So this really is the pre-process for starting CSRD. You're here today to listen to this webinar, so that means you feel responsible for this concept. However, who else should you take along in this process? And there are also some general reporting principles that you do have to understand before you can tackle CSRD further. Today, I will specifically tell you more about step 2, which is a materiality analysis. You may or may not have heard of this concept, but I will help you understand. Next, we can talk about the KPIs, the key performance indicators that one can enlist and can start reporting on. And step 4, we will also cover some software. So in order to improve your reporting process, you of course may have to think about what software you are already using, which data is already available, and which steps to take in order to improve this. Step 5 can then be to report and act up, which I think is a very important concept, to act up, to start improving. However, what needs to happen before you can improve something is a reliable measurement. And that is what CSRD is for. Transparent and reliable measurements that we can compare to other industries. So, the timeline. Right now we're living in 2023, And it says in 2024 CSRD will be enforced, which means that CSRD, the regulation, is now still under draft versions. However, this does not mean that it's not gonna happen, because in 2024, it's already been mentioned that it will be enforced, so the final version will be evaluated, which means that in 2025, it says here NFRD organizations have to report on 2024 data. This may raise the question, what are NFRD organizations? Those are the largest organizations within the EU. So these are stock-noted companies. Think about large ASML, Philips, but any company that you can also find on the stocks. Then in 2026, category 2 will have to start reporting. Those are the large companies. We of course need a definition for when a company is defined large, and this is a CSRD specific definition, which means it does not relate directly to the financial definition of large companies. So you can already start checking this off for your company. You need to check at least 2 out of these 3 categories. So have at least 20 million profits, 40 million revenue, or 250 employees. Once you tick 2 of these boxes, you fall within category 2 of CSRD. Now you might think 2026, that sounds quite far off. However, when you want to report in 2026 over reliable measures, you have to report over your 2025 data, which means that January the 1st of 2025, you have to have the right data measured in order to report on this 1 whole year later. Which means next year in 2024, all these large companies will take the time to prepare their data and think about what to measure and what not to measure in order to report on this 2026. Eventually, in 2027, category 3 will be added to this list. Those are publicly relevant companies. So think about some listed SMEs, but also insurance companies, for example. And all these categories together will account for 50,000 companies within the EU. Whereas now only 10,000 companies were reporting on sustainability measures. So this is really a very large group. I forgot to mention, by the way, if you have questions during my story, please put them in the chat. Then we will try to keep an eye on the chat. I have some help with me, and they can of course answer just the questions during my talk, so that you are not lagging behind when I'm going too fast. I hope I still have you all along. I will now introduce the first bit of what CSRD then looks like. So what are we talking about here? We made this overview of all the categories that fall within CSRD. And the first and foremost thing to notice here is the categorization: environmental, social, and governance. You may or may not have heard of this, as it's called ESG. And we were talking about the sustainability definition, and here CSRD has put sustainability as a definition within these 3 categories. So you can not only think about the forest health anymore, but you also have to think about social measures and governmental measures. So then they took these 3 categories and thought of everything that has to fall within this report, and those have turned out to be these 11 categories. So under your environmental, you can think about pollution, you can think about climate change, but also sustainability right now means your own workforce under the social category, or for example, your business conduct. So how your culture of your company impacts what you do for the planet or what you do internally. This all falls within sustainability. I think many of you are wondering what this means for your company, CSRD, and what you've previously done, because everyone's already working on sustainability. You see it everywhere. So maybe you've encountered some previous guidelines. I think I've put the most common guidelines here, and I will try to help you understand what you've already done until now and how you can use this for CSRD and why CSRD is maybe more important than the current framework. So I think the 3 most well-known guidelines are these 3. I will first go over the EU taxonomy. EU taxonomy is an often used phrase in financial reporting. EU taxonomy behaves as a common language for sustainability. So it's sort of a categorization to put your sustainability measures in. However, it is not necessarily a guideline or a regulation. There's no one here that will mandate you to work under EU taxonomy. It can only help you to put your sustainability numbers in the EU taxonomy so that another somewhat similar company can also put it in the EU taxonomy and you can start comparing. So it's not obligatory, but you can use it to provide some transparency. The next and very well-known framework is GRI. GRI is, before CSRD, it was definitely the most used sustainability framework. And I will later tell you more about what the difference is between these two. Because GRI is definitely still in place. However, it's also not mandatory. And GRI also helped to develop CSRD. So that may help you understand how this developed. Because of course, it's still important, and the common knowledge of GRI is used for CSRD. Next, we have NFRD. This is the predecessor of CSRD. It sounds somewhat similar. It's formed by the same institution, the EFRAG, which is not very important for today. However, this was the first obligatory framework. And the main problem with NFRD was that it was very small. So it only had a very small scope, and now CSRD has a much larger scope. So it's just the new development of NFRD is CSRD. So companies that are already working under NFRD, they definitely have a step ahead because they just have to develop into CSRD. Okay, as I told you, we have a main difference between GRI and CSRD. I will pop into that. And the word that we will hear the following 15 minutes is materiality. I often hear people get confused about this word because it does not refer to materials, as in this table or this glass, but there's another definition about material. So material topics under the scope of CSRD are topics that are the most important. They are where great risks and opportunities exist. Some people ask me, why don't they just use the word relevant? However, with material, we will try to define what your company can impact. Maybe you find the topic pollution very relevant. However, for your company, it may not be that impactful pollution. It can still be relevant, but it's not material because you cannot impact it. You have a very low impact there. So the term materiality is obligatory to use within your CSRD report, and I will help you get through this. And also, if you talk about GRI, if you're now reporting under GRI, it here says GRI demands reporting entities not to disclose all topics. Every company is allowed and free for themselves to decide which topics are material. So you can just say as a company, we do not report pollution because we do not find it relevant. However, with CSRD, we have this structure here with the 11 categories, and reporting entities are obliged to disclose all material topics. So this means that all of these 11 categories will pop up in your report until you can justify whether one disclosure is not material. So looking at the roadmap, we have step 1, which is previous understanding over CSRD. You can just read up on this. Then we have step 2, which demands some more input. It takes some time to do this right. And now we understand what the word material of materiality analysis means. And I will help you I will talk you through how you perform such a materiality analysis. So the theory around this. I hope you now understand why this word is important. And we will now look at the term double materiality. This is a term that pops up when you read about CSRD. And this will perform as your way to justify why a certain topic is or is not material for your company. So, talking about sustainability, we have to think about the impact of your company. I think 10 years ago, you could think about impact a whole different way than we have to do now. I think 10 years ago, we used the term single materiality a lot. I here have an example of single materiality. We're talking about a fish company they take fish out of the sea. And previously, I think in a report, all the important people from a company could sit around the table and think about, oh no, the fish stock is decreasing. This may impact how much profit we make as a company. This we refer to as single materiality. It's a very financial perspective and a very financial way to look at the world. CSRD now says we think this is not enough. We cannot only look at the financial impact of your company. That's why they introduced double materiality. Double materiality takes two perspectives. You see the example on the bottom, so you still see the financial perspective, the outside in. So what kind of impact the outside world has on your profitability. So if the fish stock decreases, indeed, we will have less profits. However, you can also reverse this concept and think about it the other way around. So what if my company takes a lot of fish out of the sea? Then we threaten the fish stock. This is the inside-out perspective. And you can also think about it as the environmental perspective. So this is double materiality. So if you were now to start reporting under CSRD, a question I often received was, which categories do I now have to report under? So what I would suggest is you perform an extensive double materiality where you go over all of these 11 categories and you try to assess your impacts on both the inside-out perspective as the outside-in perspective. So I think we now had an example of climate change, but you can also look at the social categories, and you will have to take all of the important stakeholders from your company, and together you can think about how you impact the planet and how the planet impacts your profitability. So I understand this concept is still a bit hard to grasp, so let's look at another example. So thinking about social, I think this is quite a common example, how the world is changing a little bit on behalf of sustainability and on behalf maybe of CSRD. So first, companies may think about this top financial perspective. Oh no, our employees are not that well motivated, they are not so productive, they leave, we have less revenue. However, I think the world is changing and we can now also think about the inside-out perspective. So the company's governance may affect how productive your employees are. Why are my employees less productive than the neighboring company? What are they doing different? There must be a difference in their culture. So maybe you can impact this inside out. So what I suggest is that you go over all of the CSRD categories and you try to put them in the categories and assess how impactful they are on both sides. And if you do this in total, you can make a materiality matrix. So I have a few examples here where the company assessed that they have a very high impact on climate change. For example, a large production company, they may assess their outside-in impact as major and their inside-out impact also as major. And this way you can put all the categories in a matrix and this justifies how material each CSRD topic is for your company. This is an obligatory step of CSRD. So if you start your CSRD report, so your sustainability report, you may implement it in your financial reports. And one large step of this is a materiality assessment. So one of these matrices should pop up in your reports where you have put important people together that each have their own opinion and you justify whether certain categories are impactful. And this can behave as a start for your mission and your strategy. And also you can think about the different categories of very short term and longer term, which is also a new rule of CSRD, where you think about what impact you can have this year, but you also think about what impact you can have in 5+ years. Maybe you're already considering your mobility all your employees are now coming by car, you want to change this. However, it's not realistic to change this the coming year, so maybe you can change it in a few years. That way you can make several materiality matrices where you define your strategy and the things you are willing to change. You can report this year after year, and here you can see the differences that you're already making. So let's go back to this roadmap. I think if you now understand the concept of CSRD, you can think of the timeline. So I hope you can already assess where your company in this timeline falls. Otherwise, feel free to ask your specific case in the chat. We can also always think along, that's no problem. I know I didn't specifically specify which responsibilities there are, although I hope that throughout this story you understand the concept CSRD better and you now understand which responsibilities there lay. So maybe you need someone of management aboard, maybe you already have a sustainability department, however, you may also want to tag along your financial numbers. So someone is now responsible for your financial reporting, maybe you can integrate this. So think for yourselves about which responsibilities there lie here, how quick your timeline is emerging, and how many people you want to tag along. Also, the general reporting principles, they lie within this entire story. It's how you have to disclose, which categories to disclose, and feel free to read more about this book. Then the materiality analysis. I took you through these 7 steps of how to do a materiality analysis. We will come back to this later, but I do suggest that you tag someone along that understands the categories very well and can help you understand what falls within these categories. And for that, I also want to refer to step 3. Of course, once you have assessed how impactful and major certain categories are, the next step is, what do I measure? For this, we have developed a large matrix with 60 KPIs. So for example, under the climate change category, you may already think of a few examples, for example, your emissions. But how to report on the emissions? You have your scope 1 emissions, you have your scope 2 emissions. Maybe you understand these definitions already, maybe you need some help with that. And of course, each of these 11 categories has their own KPIs. We are happy to think along with you which KPIs to measure, because we can then quantify how well your current report is already performing, maybe under the scope of CSRD. The next question you may have is, how well is my software ready for this? And maybe the term you've already heard coming up is the Sustainability Control Tower. That's why today I also invited my colleague, Yuri Lagarde, who can tell us a bit more about the do and doings of this Sustainability Control Tower. So he will take the floor and I will be back with you later. Thank you.
And welcome all. I'll be talking to you about the software component of this whole CSRD. Because by this step, you might have had your KPIs that you need to report on for your CSRD. And of course, you could be implementing them, gathering your data, putting them in your year-end reports. But then you will be missing out on the potential of the software component of it. We as McCoy, we've been looking at the SAP Sustainability Control Tower. And what this control tower does, it combines all different things, including reporting side, into one platform. So the SAP Control Tower is being built on the concept of record, report, and act. So the recording part of this app is actually about the gathering of the data. Then the reporting component is more about the visualization of the data and tracking your data. And then the acting component is about focusing on the parts where your company might need improvement, so you can actually act on it. So what brings the control tower to the table? Because it's not just your normal software where you could be watching your graphs, your data, and it all looks nice, but it also includes the integration of different apps. So of course, it's an SAP product, and you can plug into your different apps of SAP that includes the data. But it also hooks into your, for example, your S/4HANA system. And in that sense, it also takes on your financial data, but also your master data included. And in that way, you also have a sort of standardization into your platform. So you have your different reporting entities that you can report on. So using these different entities is a way of aligning this whole app together. So with all the data that you put in, you must be sure that you have these granular data aligned, and also make sure that there is no data and no data errors in there. Then it also includes the validation step. So within the app, you have the ability to do a validation step, and that makes sure that your data quality looks all right. There is a consistency check in there. The units will be checked, and the formats. Then, just outside of the reporting part, there's not just the data. There's also your own company initiatives, right? You as a company may want to grow, you may want to plant 1,000 trees by the next year, maybe even more, that's the better. And these initiatives can also be planned into your app. So you can plan out your whole imagination of how you want to look this initiative, to look like, but also how you want your ambition to see. So that's the next step. Plan upon your coming years, and is it the long term, is it the short term, mid-term? When do you want to achieve this, and what is your priority at that time? So because this is all quite structured in an app, you implement your data, you gather all of it and combine it. It also makes it easier to have it more auditable. So having to look to a different stream of data, where does it come from? What is the data source? This very much makes it easier if you have it into a system, and makes it easier for auditors to come by. And then also a very important part of the app is the ability to output your data into various reporting standards. So your sustainability reporting standards, like Carlijn was telling you, you can have that in different formats, GRI, WEF, but in this case also CSRD, your EU taxonomy. So the ability of this app to actually implement the data, gather all the data, have a report available by the actual year, and also be able to report that on different frameworks also provides with a lot more value to it. Then let me go back to a little bit about the data, because earlier I was telling you, okay, you can do it at the end of the year, but because you can plug into your different apps and your different SAP systems, and even you can integrate more systems using APIs, you can make sure that you have real-time data where you're looking at, and you can make actions based on, maybe monthly data, planned on maybe a company code or maybe on a plant level. And that actually enables you to immediately have an actionable insight during the month. So you don't have to wait for a whole year when all this data comes together and you would have to report on. So that makes, in that sense, you have a base of data, but then added to that your own ambitions as a company and your own initiatives. And next to that, you have these different integrations that you can do within your system, but also your output. So as well as your input as your output can be in different formats, although the input will be checked, that will be validated. Then of course, that's a start, right? That's the whole holy grail, so to say, if you want that. But also this product is obviously still in development. But you as a company can also mature with this product, as you can start out with your basic functionalities, and you need to comply to these different rules like CSRD. But then there's also a next step where you're integrating your data and your actual insights into your business processes. The more you do that, you will become a more actionable company in a more sustainable world. So as soon as you have these different data points integrated into your different business processes, you can really start to build a sustainable company. And that's at least the part that I have to tell you about the software component. And in this case, it's more of a platform. So coming back to the roadmap, that covers the step 4 and 5 actually, record, report, and act. And Carlijn would also introduce you a little more about the rest of the steps.
So thank you very much, Yuri. I really like it that we now have this perspective of software into it, which is of course a very important asset for each company. So looking back at what we did today, we have this roadmap. We have a few steps that you will have to start to tackle. Feel free to contact us because we are very interested in this topic and we're happy that we can tell you more about it today. But of course, we are happy to think about the specific situation of your company. For example, a materiality analysis, it will be quite a difficult process to categorize all these topics and which are material, which aren't material. Maybe you're still struggling a little bit with these concepts. I'm always open to talk to you about this. And of course, taking along the software, we can think about how mature your current software structure is, and Yuri can maybe tag along, or other colleagues of us. So feel free to contact us whenever. And we hope you enjoyed this topic as much as we do. And I would like to go to the next slide, because we think CSRD is here to stay. So if you feel the same, then contact us. Thank you.
Thanks.